Today we're turning our attention to road access and safety as projects across the state move forward to connect communities, and we learn how to better protect transportation workers. I'm Jody Kenny. And joining us on this Sunday is State Assembly Majority Leader Crystal Peoples-Stokes. She tells us all about the Kensington Expressway project in Buffalo. Plus, New York Transportation Commissioner Therese Dominguez also joins us to discuss work zone safety. And later, she shares an update on some road projects happening in Buffalo, Albany, and Syracuse. All that and so much more happening right now on In Focus. Let's begin the program with Therese Dominguez. She's the New York State Department of Transportation Commissioner. I want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, so we talk about, distracted driving. We've talked about it here on In Focus before, but I wanted to kind of highlight another aspect of that, and it's work zone safety.
Yes.
And can you talk a little bit more about highways and how they can be so very dangerous to the people who are working on them?
So we have an incredible group of professionals who work at the New York State Department of Transportation. We're about 8,500 people at the department. A good portion of those employees of our team members work out on our infrastructure each and every day, specifically the roadways and our bridges. And they're out there to keep people safe. They're out there fixing, repairing the roadways to make sure that they're safe for all of us to enjoy. But more and more we're seeing distracted drivers, impaired drivers, and people just fundamentally not paying attention to the task at hand, which if you think about it, you're driving a multi-ton vehicle and the impact at any speed can be significant, if not deadly. So the awareness that Governor Hochul has brought to New Yorkers across the board the last 2 years is to make sure that we're doing everything we can to protect all of our highway maintenance workers, whether they're working on a bridge, whether they're working for a county, state, local. We need to do everything we can to protect them because they're out there trying to keep us safe.
Right, exactly.
And that comes in the form of legislation.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Governor Hochul actually proposed it in her State of the State address. This must be amazing for you.
It's an important measure to keep people safe. Governor is really focused on public safety, and you can't talk about public safety without talking about transportation safety, because that's the core of our mission is safety, right? Keeping all New Yorkers safe. A few years ago, we were given the permission by the governor. She put forward legislation to allow for automated work zone speed enforcement. So we have cameras mounted on vehicles in work zones on construction sites around the state. We were given that permission. It was a pilot program. We collected the data for a couple of years. What it proved was if we have automated work zone speed cameras in these construction zones across the state, people slow down. Speed is reduced significantly, and by at least a third. And this year, what we're looking for is how can we expand that opportunity? The legislature provided a certain number of roads, we call them controlled access highways, that we can use these cameras on. This year, the governor said, let's expand that. Can we put these cameras on additional roadways that we do work on, right, that we operate and maintain? And so that's the ask this year of the legislature, is to work with us on how we can expand the opportunities, on where we can enforce these speed requirements. It's only in the work zone. And I'll tell you why it's so important, and I'm sorry to, but I'm really passionate about this project.
Yes, I love it.
Well, when we first got the cameras installed, we put them, the New York State DOT, we instituted them. The first camera site was on Long Island, right near the Queens border, between Queens and on the Long Island Expressway and on Long Island. And we put another one in Rochester, in the Rochester area. Within the first 45 minutes, we clocked a driver on Long Island going 139 miles an hour through a work zone.
Wow.
People out in the work zone working and someone racing through at 139 miles an hour. In Rochester, 141 miles an hour.
Oh my goodness.
So you can imagine if you're out there trying to, our highway maintenance workers don't go to an office, right? Their office is the roadway. They're out there working. And you can imagine the force of a car going 139 miles an hour next to somebody.
Even
it literally blows you back.
Right.
And unfortunately, we have video that we've shared publicly of that exact instance happening, where a highway maintenance worker, a car diverted in Tioga County and almost hit him, and he was literally blown back several feet. So it's really important to keep our folks safe.
Do you think legislation is enough? And are you happy with it in its current form? What's the next step, I guess I'm asking?
I think that the legislation that was put forward by the governor is very comprehensive. It's very straightforward. It's direct. We have an enormous amount of support, one from organized labor, the folks that are actually out there working on our roadways. And the coalition that's been put together includes labor unions, contractors, consultants, everybody who works in transportation. It's very important. It's an added safety measure that we didn't have before, and it's proving that drivers really do slow down when they're warned ahead of time. There's signage that allows them to know you're entering a work zone. This is camera enforced, and they're noticed before they actually approach it.
Let me ask you this. I know that there's some new technology that kind of warns workers when vehicles kind of enter into a closed area. Would that happen with AI, or how does that work?
There's an evolving body of technology right now that we're actually exploring as well to look and see how can we better inform our workforce. And that is something that we're actually testing right now. It's a camera technology as well, but we're talking to some of the vendors who actually have this technology to see how it works. It's been working in different circumstances in other parts of the country, so we're trying to see if we wanted to explore that, what that would look like. Some of it's AI informed. A lot of it is really based on warning systems, basically, for workers when there's a vehicle that's approaching at a high speed.
Fascinating. Yeah. All right, you're going to stick with us for another block, right?
Yes,
okay.
Thank you.
So, Commissioner, thank you so much for staying with us. That's Therese Dominguez. She's the Commissioner of the Transportation Department, and we want to say that stay with us. Still to come, we discuss frontline highway workers and the adversities that they face beyond traffic safety.
Buffalo Partnership is a tremendous regional organization and a regional asset for us. The fact of the matter is that it gives the business community and nonprofit community in West New York an opportunity to come talk to us, tell us directly what their issues are.
Oftentimes we have politicians who think something's a great idea, but they don't understand the impact on the business community. And look, this is the lifeblood of Western New York, to be able to have thriving businesses that can survive, not just survive, but thrive in this business environment.
Stay with us.
It's good for elected officials to hear directly from people whose policies they impact. And we do a very good job of really breaking things down so that the private sector understands what's coming, and they have the opportunity to talk to elected officials directly about their challenges and opportunities for their business.
It's always great to bring elected leaders, small business, big business, and other stakeholders together, because so much of the work that happens in the economic development space is through partnership.
Thanks for staying with us. We are back now with Therese Dominguez. She is the New York State Department of Transportation Commissioner, and I'm really glad that you stuck around.
Thank you.
Okay, so as you know, transportation workers face a lot of harassment too, which is something that it's just part of the job, unfortunately. Also assaults, which I found very fascinating. Governor Hochul has talked about advancing legal protections for these workers. Is that a step in the right direction? Do you think it's, enough?
I think it's absolutely necessary. These are public servants, and there's an existing law already on the books. Protections have been afforded to transit workers, to a whole host of, you think about bus drivers, you think about train drivers. A whole host of public servants have been afforded the protection. What we're seeing is more and more people, they're not just driving aggressively, they're acting aggressively. So when they're stuck, unfortunately, in traffic, they're taking it out on highway maintenance and flaggers, right? Folks that are out there doing a job. people are not just cursing, but they're throwing hot coffee.
Oh my gosh.
They're brandishing weapons, threatening with their vehicles to run over people. It's just been, unfortunately, a series of increased threats to folks that are out on the roadway trying to protect others, right? They're there to help maintain the roads and make sure that they're safe for everybody to use. And so what we're looking to do is make sure Governor Hochul advanced legislation in her budget this year to see if we can extend those protections that other public servants get to highway maintenance workers. And it would go again to not just state employees or thruway employees, but to everyone, local, county, everyone out there working.
As you're talking, I'm thinking to myself, wow, with all of these incidents that you just mentioned, it's kind of like a no-brainer, this, adding them in on the protections that are needed. I wanted to switch gears a little bit and talk about how connecting communities has become a big initiative in all of upstate New York. So let's talk about a couple of those projects. The first one I wanted to talk about was Queen City Forward in Buffalo. Could you talk a little bit about that project?
Sure. Queen City Forward builds on I would say, a legacy of work that Governor Hochul has really kicked off since she became governor. So we started in Syracuse with I-81 and taking down, we're in the process right now of taking down the viaduct, that interstate that literally cuts through the city of Syracuse and has fractured the city for a number of years. And so connecting the communities through what we call a community grid was the first step forward. We look to see across New York where are those other opportunities that we've heard about from community members, and Buffalo was the one that came to mind immediately a few years ago. And Queen City Forward is our restart on how we're looking at the Kensington Expressway, which is another piece of infrastructure that goes straight from downtown Buffalo all the way out to the thruway. But it does cut through what was traditionally and historically a park, an Olmsted Park actually, that was torn asunder and turned into a highway, high speed highway.
Yeah.
And so the question is now we're going out, we're talking to Buffalonians across the entire city, looking for feedback and looking for ideas on how do they want to move in and around the city of Buffalo. Do they want to move at a high rate of speed? Do they want to continue to use the Kensington? In what form? Or are there other roadways and other paths, other modes of transportation that they would like to take advantage of? So it's that conversation that we're going.
And you mentioned I-81. That's another big one, connecting the communities back together in Syracuse.
Yes.
That is, a lot of people consider it like righting the wrong.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. And then I also wanted to talk a little bit about reimagining the 787 in Albany. I think that's another big project. I mean, all these conversations about reconnecting communities, which were, basically, run asunder, taken apart because of growth.
Indeed. The governor has put forward, so part of her legacy is, I always say from the Bronx all the way out to Buffalo, we're looking at how do we actually connect communities across the state. We just finished a very large project in New York City in the Bronx called Hunts Point, where we were able to take trucks off of the road and give them direct access to the Hunts Point market. It allowed for a connection for people who live in the South Bronx directly to the waterfront, Bronx River, and really created some connections that never existed there before. That revitalization initiative on the infrastructure has led to housing opportunities, economic development, and the like. Same things happening in Syracuse with the I-81 investment and connecting that community. In Albany, not only are we looking at the Livingston Avenue Bridge and putting a new bridge there, that's a rail connection with a pedestrian and bike access, but 787. The conversations we've had with the community, the governor put forward, invest in environmental dollars in her budget so that we can continue to not just study, but complete an environmental assessment of what those alternatives are. How can we connect downtown Albany to the waterfront. And that's part of the larger $200 million investment that the governor's put in downtown Albany. It's just one transformative project after another. And 787 right here in Albany is going to be a real game changer, I think, for the community writ large. We've got some great conversations that are going on. But more importantly, we've got ideas on the table that we're really fleshing out with the community, and it'll be part of this larger revitalization initiative that the governor's undertaken across the board for housing, economic development, everything.
Well, I've loved talking with you because you were able to give us kind of like a bird's eye view of all of upstate New York, and that's what this show is about talking about issues that are important to upstate New York. So thank you so much for coming in and talking about this important issue, and let's hope that the legislation that the governor's proposing and that you're supporting really goes through, and that some of these major projects come to fruition sooner than later. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
All right, and that is Therese Dominguez. She is the New York State Department of Transportation Commissioner.
We really touch so many industries and so many things, everything from licenses to all kinds of regulations. So it's important to hear directly from folks. I mean, it behooves us to get out there and hear directly from people that are affected by the decisions we're making in Albany.
As a former economics teacher, I always talk about unintended consequences, and sometimes when we do regulations, it's nice to hear the other side of what their thoughts would be, the impact of such things.
More In Focus continues right after this. We'll be right back.
There has to be a partnership between government and business. I don't see it any other way. I've always looked at it that way and acted in that way. And so I have a great relationship with the partnership. As a matter of fact, when I heard them lay out what they were supporting and what they opposed, it sounds like the direction we're going as state government. So it tells me that we're in a good position where we have the public interest being honoring the private interest and the private interest honoring the public interest.
Now that's from an event highlighting the Buffalo-Niagara partnership, from business to transportation access and safety. Joining us now, and who you just saw in that clip, is State Assembly Majority Leader Crystal Peoples-Stokes. Thank you so much for joining us. So good to see you.
Thank you for having me, Jody. It's nice to see you again as well.
Okay, so you're a major driver in the $800 million Kensington Expressway project. Let's go through what this initiative will do for Buffalo, and also, can you give us an update on where the project is right now, when you think it's going to be done?
Well, what it will do is honor the goals of the former President Obama's era, when he wanted to reconnect communities that had been separated in previous years for whatever reasons. Municipalities decided to separate black communities. And so this was an effort to try to put this community back together, even though it's been an effort that folks have worked on for the last 30 years, even prior to the election of President Obama, because people could see how it negatively impacted their communities. Because if you could get on Glenwood Street at Main, you can go all the way until you get to Humboldt, and then you have to get off Glenwood in order to go around to Riley Street or around Utica Street to get back on the other side to get to the other part of Glenwood. That's how the community was separated, literally. And so people worked on this with an organization called Restore Our Community, the ROC organization, for 20 to 30 years, and putting together a strategy on how, at minimum, that portion of the 33 could be put back together. If we're just talking about tunneling a section of it, that's one thing. But if we're talking about eliminating the 33 and putting back in the Parkway, no one wants to have 70,000 cars going up and down their street every day for any reason. And not only will it impact what happens with traffic flow coming from the 198 to get downtown and or to get to the airport, what happens to traffic flow that comes from downtown that gets to Best Street, which goes to the Fugue Belt community. This is a much larger project than what the Restore Our Community was looking to do, much larger. And I'd imagine it's going to be a lot more than $800 million. As a matter of fact, the total value of what would have happened should have had started when it's supposed to, which would have been this past fall, that was $1 billion project.
Yeah.
And so if it's $1 billion just to consider tunneling from Best to East Delavan, imagine what it's going to be to remove the entire thing. And how do you reconnect 198 again? I mean, how do you get from the airport to East Delavan? I mean, it's just, it's going to be a huge project, and I would envision it taking, even though they estimate 2 to 3 years, I estimate 4 to 5.
Yeah, as you were talking, I heard, your concern for the community. And while this does affect, 70,000 cars that may drive in the area, the project is a form of social justice and environmental justice. Can you talk to that and the reason why it's so important to make the changes necessary?
Well, it's social justice because, again, people's neighborhoods were literally cut off, and it negatively impacted the value of their homes. And honestly, over the past, I would say 30 to 40 years that it's been in existence, a lot of people have gotten sick from it because, as you know, cars exhausted in different ways in the 80s than they do now. You don't have the same level of exhaust, but you did have that then. And so people did suffer through that, and they decided to come together and say, we don't want this environmental impact negatively impacting our health anymore. We would like to see something happen to it. They put in, really good work on it, and they finally settled on this idea of the tunneling, which other parts of the community, not so much that community directly there, but other parts of the community decided that's not what they want. They want to go back to how it looked when Frederick Law Olmsted originally designed it, which is a lofty goal, but a very expensive one, and quite honestly, a disrespectful one to the community that came up with the plan to make it happen. I know it gets a little long with it, but it's a very, very long-winded topic, and it's been happening to people of color in this country for decades, and here was an opportunity to shut it down, and in Buffalo at least, and that did not happen. So perhaps in the next 5 years it will.
And I know you're advocating for that, so thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching this edition of In Focus. I'm Jody Kenny. We appreciate you spending your Sunday with us.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. To keep up with important issues impacting our communities and hear more conversations with the people who are shaping the future, subscribe to our channel. You can also download our app or find Spectrum News on your TV for balanced, in-depth political coverage and more.